Welcome, wrestling fans. Welcome to Curtain Jerkin. As always, I am your host, Jacob Grondy, reporting for the Main Event Marks YouTube channel and the Dragon Suplex Podcasting Network. What a week in pro wrestling it has been. We're going to break it down. We're going to be talking about UFC 273. We're going to be talking about Noah GHC. We're going to be talking about New Japan, Hyper Battle, and some GCW shows, all on this week's podcast. We are also going to be talking about Floyd Mayweather fighting on a helipad on a skyscraper in Dubai. He will be, competing in a fight at the Burj Al Arab Hotel in, Dubai, the United Arab Emirates. He will be fighting Don Moore, and Anderson Silva will also be on the undercard. I guess there's not going to be any fans. It's just going to be our very limited fans. It's just on a helicopter pad, and the helicopter pad is on a building, but not just on a building. It's on a building that's on a man-made island that's like kind of elevated out and away from the main structure of the building. It looks insane. I didn't do a good job explaining it just then, but it looks cool as fuck, and it's something a little different. The only time people really talk about boxing nowadays is if it's something a little different, somewhat of a spectacle, or if it's Floyd Mayweather. And this event has all three of those things, checks all three of those boxes. I'm going to be tuning in. A lot of people complaining about it, saying that it's bringing bad attention to the sport of boxing. But I think boxing is stepping in more so than ever into the world of sports entertainment with, Jake Paul, Logan Paul. And I think the biggest star in boxing, Floyd Mayweather, is embracing that. He's been a bit of a crossover superstar in the world of boxing forever now, having beef with, 50 Cent and even, Conor McGregor, things like that, people outside the world of boxing. And here he is kind of doing more of that, showcasing that you don't have to just have it in the standard arena or a small club. You can do it on top of a helipad in one of the craziest cities in the world. I'm buying it. You don't have to worry about selling tickets. You can just put two people fighting in the middle of like a screensaver, more or less, and I bet it's going to do a lot more buys than whoever the fuck the champion is in whatever company you decide to watch in boxing right now. But jumping over to Raw. Raw was last night. I'm talking to you guys Tuesday morning, late Tuesday morning. I'm sorry, guys. I'm a little late, a little behind. I've been watching a lot of Ted Lasso, so that's been putting me behind on my preparations for the podcast. But it hasn't been putting Cody Rhodes behind. He's still the talk of Monday Night Raw. About 2 weeks away, 2 weeks out of, or a week away from WrestleMania. He said the word belt. He said the word wrestler. And I think you'd have to be crazy to think that Vince McMahon didn't know that he was going to say these words. But I do think it helps with the authenticity. Of course, you have the guy who is very WWE correcting him on screen, and you can kind of tell that story that I'm sure they're well aware of backstage in the front of the screen. And then you got guys like me talking about Raw. That's the only thing I'm really going to talk about. I'm a fan of Veer, kind of like how everyone is a fan of Hook. I just enjoy that he's going to be out there. I enjoy something new happening on Monday Night Raw, like Cody Rhodes, and to a lesser extent, Veer. I'm also excited to talk about UFC 273. Tony Khan and JR in attendance. Take that, Bada counts. Kamaev, hopefully I'm saying that right, win against Gilbert Burns. I was originally only going to talk about the main event, but people were abuzz on Twitter about this match way more so than the main event, so I decided to watch this one, and man, I'm glad I did. Not only for the California beard guy ref. I love the California beard guy ref. I like that he tucks in his beard into his shirt now. He used to have those things swinging low sweet chariots, and I'm sure that he could have just used them as like whips or something to break up fighters that weren't listening to him. But the UFC has rules here. They decided to tell him to tuck it in, and then we go into round one. Men landing some strikes, but pretty pensive here. Pace picks up at the end of round one. Kamazat. I'm butchering this man's name, and I'm sorry about that. He deserves better than this. Knocks down Burns, but does not knock the Brazilian out, so he lets him up. Burns gets up, and he's bleeding on the top of his head, and then they take a break to go into round two. Round two, Burns knows that he kind of got worked that last round, so he comes out swinging, lands a few slobber knockers. Then things get chippy here. I think Kamzat, you guys are probably laughing. Kamiev, I'm just going to say Kamiev. Kamiev knows that he lost that round because he kind of gets a little annoyed and hits him after the bell sounded for the end of the second round. So here, I think clear victor is Kamiev in the first round, and then in the second round, it's clear that Burns. So it's a very interesting round three here. All business to start things off. Both do look tired, though. Burns out here bleeding like Wheeler Yuta on Rampage. He fires back, teeing off on one another right up until the end of the bell. A show of bloody respect at the end. They give the nod to Kamiev. It was pretty boring after the fight. Just show of respect. They both agree that it was a great match, and they both are okay with the outcome. Not the usual UFC events here at the aftermatch. But apparently in the press conference afterwards, Kamiev had something to say about fighting Colby Covington. He said, if the guy don't call the cops and if Dana White don't go to jail, I would be happy to come to the fight and smash his face. Of course. So everyone wants a little bit of Colby Covington. But I think there's no one that's going to beat him in the octagon. Of course, we know that if you run up on him and sneak attack him when he's going into a steak restaurant, you will probably get the better of him. You'll probably get charges pressed against you. But in the ring, I don't think anyone has Colby Covington's number. And I think that's what's going to sell tickets here. Everyone wants to see the guy get knocked out, and no one can knock him out. Kind of like the Jake Paul situation, only with a more legitimate fighter. Going into the main event, the Korean Zombie versus Alexander Volkanovsky. The Korean Zombie is a legend, but his best days are behind him. Noah would probably give him the title, but here in the UFC, it was pretty rough for him. Round one, Zombie chants, feel the Jacksonville air. Zombie just gets rocked and bleeding. Zombie gets dropped and then gets back up and stumbles, saved by the bell. Round two, it was a light Volkanovsky chant here. So you kind of saw people were like, hey, we like the Zombie like everyone else, but you got to give it to Volkanovsky. But not everyone thought that. It was a lighter chant for Volkanovsky, the guy who is clearly the victor here over the Zombie. Zombie just starts getting rocked, but he won't die. You can't put the Zombie down. Like anyone who's played Left 4 Dead, you got to shoot him like 4 or 5 times. Round three, crowd back into chanting for the Zombie, but he just continues to get his ass whooped. Zombie down again, saved by the bell, but not the beating. The announcers want them to call it. Going into round four, Herb Dean shortly calls it after the bell sounds. Alexander Volkanovsky, he's hard to beat. Might be the champ for years, but legends like the Korean Zombie will live on forever. I joked about him going to Noah or whatever, but I think as over as he is, why not, test the waters in the world of pro wrestling? He's already got the entrance music. He's already got the nickname. He's halfway there, in my opinion. Volkanovsky telling everyone in his division to get his shit together because the Korean Zombie was the 4th ranked opponent. So he couldn't fight the 2nd ranked. He couldn't fight the 3rd ranked. He had to go to the 4th ranked, and it was a lopsided affair. So he's saying, hey guys, get your shit together so I can actually fight the guys who will make this a good fight. I don't want to put on a bad main event for these people, which I thought was a good point. And the Korean Zombie's got a lot of heart, and he's one of my favorites of all time. Coming out to the Cranberries, you gotta love it. But going on to New Japan Pro Wrestling here, they had their Hyper Battle event. I didn't rank the matches on this show like I would, but I should have. This was a very good show, 6 title matches. New Japan is still my favorite wrestling promotion, even after all these years, even after AEW started. I feel like a lot of people left when AEW started and the Bucks and Omega jumped over, but I stayed with them, and it's paying off. I mean, this is some great matches here. I would even hold this up to a lot of the WrestleMania shows and everything And this is just a standard, maybe you would call this a B show for New Japan. Naito and Shingo beat Hinare and Ospreay off the bat. Hinare is kind of the Yujiro of the United Empire at this point. Taguchi and Wato versus LP and Ishimori for the IWGP Junior Tag Titles. Bullet Club here puts Wato in the Tree of Woe and then pulls Taguchi toward the post like they were about to be Bret Hart and locking the figure four around the post in the new generation era of WWF. But as because Master Wato is in the Tree of Woe and they're pulling Taguchi, crotch first toward the post, crotch to face, and then Wato falls down, putting his crotch in Taguchi's face. If you can visualize what I'm seeing here, that was kind of my main takeaway of this match. Taguchi ends up having his ass out at the end, rolling up LP for the victory, retaining the titles, LP always shows his ass, but I guess Taguchi showed his ass here for the win. And then we go on to the third match here, Yano versus Tai Chi for the King of Pro Wrestling trophy. This was a no-ropes match, but not like a no-ropes match like you would see in FMW or anything like that. It was like kind of inspired by sumo wrestling, but it wasn't a sumo match. It was well done if you're going to do something ridiculous like this, but it was well done, but a poor idea, I would say. Kind of reminded me of the Big Show in WrestleMania. I think Yano won here. I don't know really what happened. But then Sonata comes out, and I feel like that was like the B show. That was like the pre-show. You had two goofball matches, and then you had some stars in a tag match. But then Sonata coming out here kind of was like the turn of the page from a comedy show into a great pro wrestling show. Sonata has to relinquish the IWGP US Championship because of an eye injury. He wants to put the title on Tanahashi, but Ospreay comes out saying that he deserves the title for whatever reason. Sonata wants to, give it to Tanahashi. Tanahashi comes out, challenges Ospreay. So for the vacant IWGP US title, we will have Tanahashi versus Ospreay, which kind of solidifies this belt as a number 2 title. I remember when they brought in this championship, it was kind of a joke. Like Kenny Omega famously didn't want it on him. And, it kind of got passed around the undercard. It was unlike Juice Robinson for a long time. And, Kenta had it, so it didn't exist for like a year because he was stuck in America while the COVID situation was happening and no one could go to Japan. But with the Intercontinental title being swallowed up by the heavyweight title and then the Never title kind of losing, its luster a little bit, I would say that the U.S. title has moved its way up to the number 2 title in all of New Japan Pro Wrestling, and then having two former world champions like Tanahashi and Ospreay going after it kind of even more solidifies that. A big reason why the Never title dropped so much was, I think, it being on Evil and having that awful match with Ishii at Wrestle Kingdom. Speaking of the Never title, Evil versus Hiromu Takahashi. The Timekeeper table spot is officially stale. It was funny for a year. There was a ref bump as always. Hiromu hits Everything is Evil, but no ref. Time bomb 1-2. Evil kicks out. Low blow from Evil. Low blow from Hiromu. Everything is Evil. 1-2-3. Evil gets the victory. After the match, Guerrillas of Destiny come out. They take out members of Bullet Club. I think Tama Tonga would be a great person to put the Never title on to kind of re-solidify and maybe bring it up to the third ranked title, or maybe even, past the U.S. title a little bit. It would be something new. I think it would be his first singles title, if I'm not mistaken, because this Evil experiment did not work. 2020, he only beat Hiromu, a junior heavyweight, and then he lost again to Naito. So they quickly took the titles off of him, and since then they kind of gave him the Never title to kind of cover up that they made a mistake in pushing Evil so much. And then Wrestle Kingdom happened, where they ruined what would be usually one of the best matches on the show with this House of Torture bullshit. The fans are tired of it. I'm tired of it. I don't know what they could do now, because it seems like Evil has like his own faction adjacent to Bullet Club, one of the most popular factions of all time. They're kicking out all the, older Bullet Club members and Guerrillas of Destiny. So Evil is just bringing everything down. Evil is bringing down the Bullet Club. Evil is bringing down the Never title. And I think you need to maybe stick him in a tag title situation soon before you fuck anything more up, honestly. I'm just, I'm not trying to, I'm glad the man can feed himself and feed his family if he has one, but this is not working here in the world of New Japan Pro Wrestling, and I think they need to move on. And we're going to move on here talking about Goto and Yoshihashi versus Jeff Cobb and the Great Okan tag title matchup. Tour of the Islands gets to the United Empire the tag titles. I think this is awesome. This was what needed to happen to kind of freshen up the tag title situation, putting on some fresh faces, getting Jeff Cobb and Okan the tag titles here, and kind of helping out the United Empire. United Empire lost a lot at Wrestle Kingdom, so right now they're kind of an undercard faction. You need to bring that faction up to the top, and Jeff Cobb and Okan, I like them a lot. Legit backgrounds, and they kind of worked well together as a team. El Desperado and Show, this match was far beyond beat my expectations. This was the best match from a House of Torture member since the group formed, I would say. Desperado goes for a dive, but Show hits him with a chair in midair. Show also knocks El Desperado off the apron at one point, and he lands hip first on the guardrail. Then later, El Desperado gets the momentum in his favor, goes for a running senton, and lands on the guardrail as well as Show. So he's just landing on the guardrail, eating shit, just killing himself on offense and defense. Back in the ring, frog splash, 1-2. Show kicks out, low blow from Show. Yep, he grabs a wrench. Desperado stops him from using the wrench with a Kota Ibushi maneuver. I don't know if Kota Ibushi's coming back. I don't know if they're teasing something there, but that happened. Show locks in a choke. Desperado struggling to get the ropes, but he does. Pinche Loco, 1-2-3. El Desperado gets the victory. El Desperado is the MVP from the post AEW era of New Japan for me. I mean, someone who stopped watching New Japan when AEW started in 2019 and then maybe watches a random show like this is probably like, what the hell, what is this El Desperado doing? But if you followed along, you saw the evolution of how good this man has been in the last 3 or 4 years. It's, chef's kiss, bring him up. At this point, I would have him, maybe lose the junior title and bring him up during the G1 because, he's a larger junior heavyweight. He's bigger than some of the heavyweights you have, and I think he's over enough to be a part of the G1 and have some great matches with some guys in the heavyweight division. After the match, though, Ishimori comes out, challenges Desperado. Desperado is about to say yes, then the lights go out. Francesco Akira appears, an Italian-born junior heavyweight who has wrestled in All Japan and has wrestled in Rev Pro, who kind of came out, announced that he joined not only New Japan but the United Empire. Things heating up a bit for the Best of the Super Juniors. So before the Best of Super Juniors, we're going to get Ishimori versus El Desperado. That match is probably going to be pretty good. And then Best of Super Juniors, we're going to have, this guy Francesco Akira. I haven't heard much about him. I just kind of looked him up on Cage Match. It's pretty interesting that he's from Italy, and he's got a pretty interesting pedigree. I'm thinking this guy's going to kill it because I think anyone brought in from into the United Empire has a Will Ospreay stamp of approval, and Will Ospreay has brought in LP, and LP I think is a great wrestler, and just to kind of be the new junior heavyweight in that faction kind of probably helps that faction out a great deal. I'm pretty excited about this. I was also pretty excited about Okada versus Zack Sabre Jr., my two favorite wrestlers in New Japan squaring off here for the world title. Shibata on Japanese commentary for this one. Of course, Zack Sabre Jr. won the New Japan Cup to get his match with Okada, much like Shibata did in 2016, having a legendary contest with Okada. Great match, but then Of course, after the match, he was paralyzed via an offensive headbutt that he delivered to Okada, so it was very bittersweet. But then fast forward to 2018, Zack Sabre Jr. wins the New Japan Cup, faces Okada, doesn't get the victory that day. But then here we are again, 2022, a similar situation. Kind of Zack Sabre Jr. wins the New Japan Cup yet again, and now here he is facing Okada again. They stay on the ground in the early going. As you can assume, that favored Zack and frustrated Okada. Zack playing into that frustration by kicking the champ, jumping on Okada's back, locking in a bit of a variation of an octopus at one point. Zack going after the arm to kind of stop the Rainmaker, but then tombstone on the floor from the Rainmaker, drop kick off the top, tombstone in the ring. Okada goes for the Rainmaker, gets countered into a Zack driver, 1-2, Okada kicks out, PK to Okada, kicks out at 1 at the 25-minute mark, Okada drop kick, then Zack dodges another Rainmaker, Okada hits the Zack driver on Zack, and then the Rainmaker, 1, 2, 3, Okada gets the victory, and then after the match, Okada calls out Naito. Naito comes out, says, you beat me once, I beat you once in this chapter of their feud, in this chapter of their rivalry. So they're going to have a rubber match, and it's going to be May 1st at Dontaku. So Dontaku is shaping up here. It looks like they're going to have Ospreay and Tanahashi. They're going to have Naito and Okada. They're probably going to do something with Evil and Tama Tonga. We have new tag champs. We're going to have Ishimori and El Desperado. So I would, stamp that show fucking stacked. But going back here, Zack Sabre Jr. with an amazing showing gets over here a little bit more so with that Japanese audience, more so than ever, I would say. And he keeps chipping away here. Eventually, I think they're going to put the title on him. You can get more over losing a good match than you can winning a bad match. Look at Wheeler Yuta. Look at Gabriel Burns in the match in UFC, in the fight in UFC. And look at Zack Sabre Jr. And then compare that to Evil and Alexander Volkanovsky. You can have a bad match and people are just going to remember a bad match. They're going to remember being bored. But you can have a good match and lose, and people are going to remember, oh yeah, that guy, that feeling I get when that guy is out there is excitement. So you can, losing a good match actually helps you more than winning a bad match. And we've seen that in the world of sports entertainment, combat sports, and pro wrestling this week. Staying in Japan, we're going over to Noah. Of course, April 30th, we have Go Shiozaki versus Fujita. And I'm pretty excited for this one because I feel like there's two directions that Noah is getting pulled at here. There seems to be the school of thought from a large portion of the fan base here with podcasters and everything like that, where it seems like Noah wants to lean on the stars that they have already made to push forward into the future, like Nakajima or Go Shiozaki. But there also seems to be the school of thought, maybe brought on by management within the company, that they put the title on Muta and it got new fans. But they've been trying to do that ever since with like Fujita and a lot of the other older talent, and it seems to have the law of diminishing returns here. And they don't seem to maybe realize that you can only do that trick once, and it has to be with a solidified megastar like Muta. You can't do it with someone that just happened to be popular in another promotion maybe a few decades ago, even if they have like an MMA style background with Fujita, and expect there to be larger crowds or people to be interested at all. They're also bringing in, Rene Dupree and Michael Elgin, maybe to help with that expansion. But the thing is I don't think anyone's really clamoring for a Rene Dupree match. And I definitely don't think people are clamoring for a Michael Elgin match for different reasons there. So with this Go Shiozaki Fujita match, it's going to be, does the company realize what their crowd is clamoring for, which is they want to see the solidification of stars that they've seen from the ground up, or is the company just going to still double down on this idea where the older stars will bring them more of a spotlight? We will have to see. That's going to be April 30th. On that same day, there's a Triple Mania show in Mexico, and then the day after is that New Japan show. So this is going to be a great weekend for international pro wrestling. The last weekend of April going into May of 2022. Sign me the fuck up. I'm excited about it. I'm also excited to review the national title match that happened over the weekend, Tagashi Sugiura versus Kenoh. This is kind of another example of like an elder statesman versus a star that's been built up through Noah. This match is also kind of setting up the tag title match for that show on April 30th. Action goes to the floor, Kenoh goes into the rail, and after he hits the guardrail, he rushes into the ring. He thought this was clever. The crowd really didn't care. He got like 1 or 2 claps after doing this, but then they go back to the floor, goes back into the barricade, and then Hideki Suzuki, who spent a lot of his time on the floor the last few years during his WWE NXT run as a member of Diamond Mine, bucks up to Kenoh. And right now I'm like, dude, Suzuki, you took an L, and you just kind of had your whole WWE run was a big L, staying on the ground. Why are you bucking up to the leader of the Congo? So that's kind of where my head was at. Back in the ring, they had an ankle lock battle. Big boot at the same time, both men down. German into the buckle by Sugiura. You can feel the momentum kind of go in the favor of the champ here, which is Sugiura. Then Kenoh hits a double stomp to the champ's butt, flips him over to hit it in his abdomen like the traditional double stomp that you would see. No one home, another ankle lock, Kenoh struggling, and then he ends up tapping out. This is interesting to see them still put the title on the older guys here with all the stuff that I already have gone over. I don't know. Like I'm a fan who was brought in with the Muta title reign, and I see what these, fans who've been watching Noah for a lot longer of time are talking about. I don't want to see Fujita or any of these guys in the title picture. I'm much more interested in Go Shiozaki having the title run. Apparently he had a big epic title run in 2020 that I just missed. So I want to see Go Shiozaki win. I want to see this faction led by Kenoh kind of reign supreme a little bit here. Maybe even go into New Japan a little bit, just like they kind of hinted at Wrestle Kingdom. Maybe have Kenoh or Nakajima in the G1 or something like that. Just brainstorming here, fantasy booking. But we will see on April 30th what will happen with all of that. But jumping over to America here, GCW had 2 shows in California, 1 in LA, 1 in San Francisco, and I wanted to focus on 2 matches here that kind of showcased some wrestlers that kind of created the most buzz for themselves over WrestleMania weekend. One being the Briscoes, having matches with the Good Brothers, of course winning the GCW tag titles and having the best match of the weekend in my eyes with FTR. They went up against Bussy here for the GCW tag titles. Slow start until they start brawling to the floor. They set up a double-decker door table thing. Effie puts Mark through that double-decker door table thing. Sick transition back in the ring. Effie slams him, goes into a dragon sleeper of sorts. Jay breaks that up by just throwing a chair at Effie. Mark throws another chair at Effie. Effie bleeding. Allie Katch, though, gets put through a door. She's bleeding, but that doesn't stop her. She gets the best of the Briscoes in a 2-on-1 attack. Ref bump. Jay Driller, no ref to count the pin. The crowd counts all the way up to 9 or 10. Second Gear Crew runs in. They screw over the Briscoes. 1, 2, 3. Bussy gets the tag titles. I thought this was great here on multiple fronts. You got the Second Gear Crew and the Briscoes continuing their rivalry, which is probably the most interesting thing that's happening in GCW right now in my eyes. And then you have Bussy, 2 wrestlers that I was pretty upset by didn't go over in the Hammerstein, get GCW titles here, get GCW gold here. And then I'm starting to think that maybe having them lose in the Hammerstein was a good thing. Maybe Brett Lauderdale knew what he was doing in the Hammerstein because they got the biggest audience more so than ever, fall in love with the characters like we all did, but now they're seeing them as underdogs because they didn't get the victory that night. But then they stayed. Hopefully, they stayed with GCW, and they're following the journey of Bussy, and they're seeing them get their titles, which is way more sweet now than because they're seen as underdogs. So you saw the underdogs rise up to victory and get tag gold rather than just having them just solidified and solidified and solidified. Kind of like how we see with Roman Reigns before he went heel, the crowd will turn on something like that. So I've been sitting here for weeks talking about how the Hammerstein wasn't effective, but it might have been effective. Who knows here? I'm going to continue watching GCW, and we're going to continue seeing where this tag championship reign from Bussy goes. The LA show also had AJ Gray defeating Blackwood to retain his title, Janela defeating Gringo Loco, and Suzuki beating Blake Christian. Suzuki also wrestled Mike Bailey, which I thought those two guys created a lot of buzz for themselves at WrestleMania weekend. Mike Bailey having 9 matches, Suzuki wrestling all over the place. Like anytime you'd go on Twitter, you'd find out something new that Suzuki did, including like I think getting pictures with Stephanie McMahon and wrestling Effie at Spring Break. The next morning, wrestling for the New Japan show, all kinds of shit. Winning the Ring of Honor Television Championship. Suzuki mocks Mike Bailey's handshake attempt at the early going. Suzuki then beats Speedball's ass all around the ring. Bailey having to grab a fan, trying to just protect himself as Suzuki pulls at his feet. I popped for this one. The fan felt super uncomfortable, I think, but the whole rest of the audience really enjoyed this one. Suzuki excuse me there, guys. Suzuki bickering with the ref like the whole time here. Speedball hitting a twisting standing moonsault. 1-2. Suzuki kicks out. Suzuki dodging the kicks. This looked great until Speedball just hesitated a little bit. Suzuki let his guard down. Wham! Speedball gets the upper hand with that kick. Moonsault to the floor. Standing moonsault double knee. Buzzsaw kick. 1-2. Suzuki kicks out again. He goes for the moonsault double knee. No one home here. Gotch style pile driver. 1-2-3. Suzuki gets the victory. But Mike Bailey earned Suzuki's respect at the end. He got that handshake that he couldn't get at the beginning of the match. Kind of maybe showcasing what we all learned this week as wrestling fans, which if you have a good match and lose, you can then gain the respect and get put over rather than having the victory on a bad match. But this was kind of displayed in front of our eyes during the body of a wrestling show with Suzuki shaking the hand of Mike Bailey, Speedball Mike Bailey. This is great. Great weekend of pro wrestling. Cody Rhodes on Monday Night Raw. Still interesting after 2 Monday Night Raws. I'm going to Raw in Greensboro in May with a group of friends. I'm going to be talking about how the crowd is for Cody, because last time they came to the Greensboro Coliseum with AEW, last time Cody came to the Greensboro Coliseum with AEW, he got booed. And then even after the show, even after the cameras were turned off, they were introducing members of the Crockett family that made Greensboro Coliseum notable in the world of pro wrestling. He was still getting booed. He even said, "Hey guys, the cameras are off now," and they still booed him. So I wonder, is there going to be a big difference between AEW fans and WWE fans in Greensboro? I don't think so. So it's going to be interesting to see, is Cody going to get cheered now? He did have a great match at WrestleMania. He's coming across way more authentic in WWE than he did in AEW. So I'll get back to you guys with that. What is going to be Cody's reaction in Greensboro? Let me know in the comments below. But until then, fly high. I'm out.